Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another video. This is your host, Rising Oblivion. Today, guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about SMT5 and its progress so far, how the reception was, and whether or not we think Atlus is going to be done with SMT5, because it looks like we might have some potential things in the future, we might not. But by taking a look at the past releases that we've had for the main core Shin Megami Tensei games, we can kind of speculate what we might be seeing for something like Shin Megami Tensei V. I think to better understand what is going on when it comes to the mainline Shin Megami Tensei games, for us to really know more about Shin Megami Tensei V, it is good for us to take a look at the past Shin Megami Tensei releases. More specifically, we're going to be taking a look at Shin Megami Tensei 3 and Shin Megami Tensei 4, because there is a little bit of a difference when it comes to both of those. But let's first start with Shin Megami Tensei 3. So, Shin Megami Tensei 3 had multiple different things. I guess you could just call it Nocturne. I'll just say Nocturne. Nocturne had different alterations to it. I'll put it that way. It didn't have full-on DLC or a full-on completely different, sort of version of the game, but Shin Megami Tensei 3 had multiple versions, and they came out typically a year or so afterwards. There were some different localization ones. Lucifer's Call, for instance, the game wasn't called Nocturne everywhere, but that's not really what I mean by that. I mean, full-on, there were differences in the game, being able to have Dante in there, Raido in there, having to be able to join your team. It would periodically change things throughout the game, similar to what we have with Shin Megami Tensei 5 already, with the SMT3, the Demi-Fiend sort of DLC. So we kind of already have that in there. And if you didn't know that, yes, you could have a Shin Megami Tensei 3 DLC in Shin Megami Tensei 5. God, saying these names, Christ. I'm not cutting that out. I'm just going to keep that in because that's how complicated saying these names so much is. SMT5, I'll just say that. SMT5 has SMT3 DLC in there, where you can fight the other Demi-Fiends and have them join your team and whatnot. Similar to that is what Shin Megami Tensei 3 has. So they're kind of mirroring that. You fight the fiends as you go along, but in Shin Megami Tensei 3, there are DLCs that sort of change throughout. You can have Dante constantly appearing, you can have Raidu constantly appearing, so there have been different alterations to that. Shin Megami Tensei 5 hasn't had that as something added on later, but the game kind of already has that kind of baked into it, I guess. DLC, like modern day DLC, I guess is kind of what that is. But let's take a look then at Shin Megami Tensei 4. What do we have there? Well, Shin Megami Tensei 4 released in 2023 and had a full-on, I guess you could say, like game sort of attached to it that came out later. 3 years later, in 2016, that's when we got Shin Megami Tensei Apocalypse, or Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. So it took about 3 years for them to do like a sort of halfway overhaul of like kind of a brand new game set in Shin Megami Tensei 4. So that's kind of the difference there when it comes to Shin Megami Tensei 3 or Shin Megami Tensei 4 as to what we might want to see with Shin Megami Tensei 5, right? Do we just want it to be something like SMT3 where it just adds some new characters, adds some different things, maybe like it puts Ringo from Soul Hackers in there, I don't know, something like that? Or do we want something like Apocalypse where it's going to fully, completely give us something brand new, a full kind of experience there? It's going to obviously you reuse the same models, locations, things like that probably, right? But Apocalypse is more of its standalone type of thing, as to where we have stuff like Dante and Raidu just jumping into SMT3. It's just more some cutscenes and some different, things that they have to put into the game. There's not a whole lot there. So when it comes to that, SMT5 kind of has that already, but like I said, they could do something like putting Ringo in there, or doing something with further titles. Dare I even say Persona? I don't know. Hopefully we'll just, they'll keep those things separate, but they could potentially do something like that in the future. I just say Ringo because that seems to be like a newer thing. That's kind of what they did with SMT3, so we could see something like that potentially. I personally am going more towards something like Apocalypse, where we kind of get a brand new experience, sort of what-if scenario type of deal when it comes to the game, and being able to use its assets, use its models, because SMT5 has some beautiful demon models, really cool, skill sets and everything else. The gameplay's fun, the overworld stuff is really cool. Give us more open world stuff, give us some more places to go to, things to do, potentially give us more lore when it comes to the demons and whatnot. I think a lot of people didn't enjoy the story of 5, but if they could fix that a little bit here by giving us a sort of Apocalypse DLC, giving us some more content, giving us some more context to all of this stuff. And that's what I would love to see the most. So those are kind of the two avenues that we have here for SMT5. Hopefully they do something like that, at least if we're trying to bank on past experiences when it came to mainline SMT titles. That's what's going to happen. If we kind of look at Atlus as a whole, as a company, they typically never just have the game come out and that's it. Golden, Royal, FES, Portable, Persona has a bunch of these different titles do the same thing. Shin Megami Tensei has done this multiple times as well, so it kind of just seems strange if they're just going to completely leave it alone. But this game is a more modern release. It came with a lot of day one DLC. Even in comparison to something like Persona or Soul Hackers 2, SMT5 had a lot of DLC kind of already put into it. So it's a little bit hard to say whether or not they're completely done with this or just maybe ready to move on to Shin Megami Tensei 6. Let me know down in the comments. What would you like to see? Do you think they're done? I feel like there is more for them to branch off of when it comes to the story of Shin Megami Tensei 5, because it still feels like there's some gaps there. There's a decent jump towards the end of the game where stuff just kind of immediately just unfolds and there's not a whole lot going on there. I would like to know more of the backstory behind the Nahabino and stuff like that. Get to learn a little bit more about Tsukiyomi and all of the bigger Japanese demons and whatnot. Even the other ones, like the Egyptian ones or the Norse ones, that would be good to learn as well, because they set up a lot of cool things in this, and they're just like, that's just set up just for the story to go forward, but we're not going to fully explain it. So if they could explain a little bit more about that and go more in depth with that, that would be really, really cool. Getting to know all of these different places and potentially even go to all of these different places, gods and whatnot, their lands, go to Nordic places, Egyptian places, that would be really cool. It's always Japan, it's always set in Japan. I get it and I love it, believe me. I love the Japanese locations and all of the Mega 10 games a lot. They all have something that they give, right? But I think going down that avenue, I guess, is where I personally, I guess, would want to see. But let's move on over to something else, and that is the time, right? It's 2 years, so we're not having a whole lot here already with SMT5 when it comes to Atlus having development time to change this. Like I said, the game came out in 2021, it is now 2023, but really it's this November that will be 2 years for the, I guess, sort of anniversary of Shin Megami Tensei 5. So 2 years of development, and this was one of the longer development cycles when it came to the mainline Shin Megami Tensei games. To be fair, in general, the mainline game is something that they try to take a lot of time on. Persona 5 took a lot of time as well, and from what we were noticing, something like Project Refantasy as well, when it comes to further down in the branches of development there at Atlus, they're taking a long time, a very long time on these games. And I think it's also a good thing, right? It sucks as a player because we're not getting our games so fast, but it's also good on one hand because we're understanding that they're taking their time with it. I'd rather them take their time and get the game out completely done and, you know, in a good shape rather than it be completely busted and, like, unusable or something like that. But that's my speculation so far in SMT5. I think we'll get something next year if we're going to be looking at that. If we don't, hopefully they're just steady along in development for another Shin Megami Tensei mainline title. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe for more content. As always, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you all so much for watching.